Welcome to Retirementals, a podcast that dives headfirst into the issues facing the financial sector at the intersection of investment, technology and financial advice. Hosted by Abraham Okusanya, you can expect raw honesty, critical analysis and energetic interviews. Here is your host, Abraham Okusanya.
Good day and welcome to Retirementals. It's great to have you all on the podcast today. My guest today is Chanelle Pattinson, who is a financial planner and a podcast host. She's the host of her Future Bright podcast. Chanelle, welcome to Retirementals.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
You're the only one who knows how many times I've had to retake that introduction line. But, Chanelle, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this legendary career of financial planning.
Yeah, absolutely. So my dad is a financial advisor, financial planner, and he has been since literally as long as I can remember. I went to his office from the age of very small, doing my homework in the summer holidays, being around his clients. But growing up, I would always explain what he did as drinking tea and making money grow. So if anyone asked me what he did, that's what I said. Honestly, I promise you, until probably the age of 18, that's what I said, because that's what he did in my eyes. But what I also thought was that it was incredibly boring. Growing up, I was like, that is never what I'm going to do. Like, I could not think of anything worse. I thought it was so boring. I went off, I did art and I did theatrical makeup. I worked at ITV and I did all these different jobs. And then Dad was like, Chanelle, can you just try an exam? See what you think. I don't know if he saw something in me or if he was fed up with me quitting my job. I'm not quite sure. But he was like, just try an exam, see what you think, and we'll go from there. So I did my first exam, and at the time I was working in Debenhams, and this lady walked past me and I started chatting to her, and I was telling her what I was studying and this and that, and she was like, oh, I work up the road at Old Mutual Wealth, which is now Quilter. And she said, if you're doing the exams, do you want to come for a job interview? And I thought, surely not. Like, this is so weird. And I know, honestly, I was thinking my own dad won't employ me at this point, so that's very kind of you. And I went for the job interview and I got the job the next day, and then that was it really. I started doing the exams and I thought, do you know what? I really enjoy this. It's interesting. The bit that was always missing for me was, for a long time I was admin, power planning, but like I just wanted to speak to people. Like, I think people will know from the minute they meet me, like, I just love people. Like, that is what I love. So I wanted to be a financial planner. Like, that was always my end goal, because being behind a computer for a whole day not speaking to anyone, I would be climbing the walls. My boyfriend wouldn't even want to come home because he was scared of the amount of talk that was going to come out of me when he walked through the front door. Yeah, that's kind of where it started and the path I took, I suppose.
That's incredible. I think you're the youngest, guest we've, in terms of that I've interviewed on the show. And every time I ask people, almost everyone, this question, how did you get into financial planning? They always say, I fell into it. Well, you're the first guest who was literally born into it. But it's fascinating that you went off and tried, did your own thing in all the different places. You at ITV, you gave up that to come, to the profession. That is truly fascinating.
Yeah, I think people did think I was a little bit crazy. I got an apprenticeship and I was literally 16 and I applied for this apprenticeship at ITV and thought, never going to get it. Went for this interview of hundreds of people, got all narrowed down, got through and got it. And I was commuting, I lived down in Hampshire, and I was commuting every day at 16 back and forth to London. And I was kind of like a team administrator, and I had the most insane experiences. Like, I went to the Brits in a box. I went everywhere. I used to get sent round to the lift, and I collected the Jackson family. Like it was crazy. But I was all my life I've been I will only do what makes me happy, which is people get so fed up of because I just quit all the time. But to me, it's so important. And I was like, I can't see my future here. I don't know what I want to do. And I was so young. I was like, I feel like I need to work it out more. So I was like, I quit. And everyone was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I just need to work out what I want to do, basically.
That's interesting. So I guess in a way you are finding your way back in quotes to media, let's say. So talk a little bit about you know, what you're doing with social media. I know you have a meaningful following on Instagram. We'll come back to the podcast. Let's talk about that. What made you get into social media? And by the way, for the uninitiated who don't know what Instagram is no, I'm joking, I'm joking. All right. So, I'm sorry. Talk to us about Instagram. What the flip is Instagram, and what are you doing on there?
Absolutely. So I was looking on Instagram. I'm on there quite a lot anyway because of, I don't know, my age or whatever. I'm not being ageist, but my age is typically on Instagram a lot. And there's a lot of finfluencers, so like financial influencers. And I was looking at them, and they're doing amazing things. Many of them. There's a lot of stuff out there that shouldn't be out there, but there is also a lot of amazing stuff that is. But what I noticed is that nobody I could find was qualified, and that kind of like blew my mind. I was like, how are all these individuals got so many people following them, listening to every word they say, but none of them have any qualifications? I was like, how does that work? Like that just, I just couldn't get my head around it. So I thought, okay, the only thing I could do is give it a go myself. So I wondered if that reason, but also people seem to be fascinated that I was kind of like a young female financial planner. Like when people ask, even now, like when people ask me what I do, they're like, eh? Are you? Like they're like, honestly, I get it all the time. Like people are so genuinely confused. My dad says it. They're like, yeah, obviously. Like they don't go, huh? To my dad. Just to me, they are baffled. And then they normally say, are you an accountant? Can you do my books? But first, they're just completely confused. So I wanted to put myself out there as, okay, like this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, this is my job, because also I love my job. So I wanted to show people that maybe were coming into the industry or were doing a change or anything like that, like what I was doing. So I started for that reason, posting like a bit of educational content, a bit about me. But the funny thing was, I'd post these educational posts, and they would do quite well. And then I'd post a photo of me and the dog, and that would do like 100 times better. I was like, okay, interesting. And it just shows you. But what would happen is the same individuals had seen those last couple of posts, but the photo of me and the dog had then triggered them to message me because they could relate to me. They'd be like, okay, she's just a normal person with a very cute cocker spaniel that I could speak to because she just looks like normal and like me, and I could relate to her. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. I've just really enjoyed it. It's a place where I've made friends, connections, clients, and I just think it's worth a go for anyone, really. I know a lot of individuals are like, we try social media, it doesn't work. And I was having this conversation the other day, and it's like, okay, well, how hard did you try? Because I've been doing it for well over a year, and I've got about 2,500 followers. And compared to a lot of other accounts, that's still nothing. Like that's not a lot. But I've made like one connection that's made a load of other connections, and you have to look at the smaller things that come out of it, and you have to put a lot of time and effort consistently to build up. You can't just post a few posts and just leave it. And also that whole relatability thing is really important. Like you can't be posting photos of your blue and gold office with people like my dad in suits, because that's not what the people on Instagram relate to. They don't, that makes them feel pushed out. It makes them feel like it's not for them. It makes them feel like they can't approach you. Like you have to do it in a different way, which I think sometimes individuals can't get their head around, including my dad. He's like, well, I'd never do that.
It's fascinating. Two things struck me from what you just said. One, which is kind of a bit of a bugbear of mine. I try not to take it to the extremes. Is when unqualified people, like people who have zero qualifications, zero experience, um, you know, and frankly, zero regulatory responsibility, are, you know, are referred to, regarded as, and talk to people about, personal finances. All these personal finance experts, I think he does, for people, financial advisors and other people who've, spent a lot of time, getting qualified and getting experience. it's it kind of hikes us a little bit. It's like if you wanted to talk to a doctor, or if you say someone's a medical expert, you don't go bring a journalist who's done a lot of work on reporting on hospital, or you find a doctor, you find, a medical professional to talk. Yet in financial services, you see some of these, they have massive following, um, especially on social media. And I've always thought, how wonderful would it be if you find, someone who's very qualified, right? Experienced financial advisor, and, they have that, media exposure, that relatability, to the common person. I guess that's what you're trying to do.
I'm trying, yeah. And it's definitely, it's not easy. Like Instagram and the online world is a funny place, and it sometimes can be demotivating, and sometimes it can be really exciting. Like it varies, but I think, like you said, those individuals need to be there. These qualified experts who actually do know what they're talking about need to be in that place, and they need to be seen, and they need to be listened to, because the power that some social accounts have over their followers is crazy. Like they could post one thing about a certain type of investment, and a hell of a lot of people would take them up on that, or buy that share, or whatever it is, because they just have absolute faith in this influencer that's online. So qualified individuals and experts need to be there, and I think I've seen more in the last year, definitely. But it's also showing the individuals that are on Instagram what the difference is, because I think there's a lot of people that wouldn't actually know, okay, they're qualified and that means that, and I should look at what they're saying. There needs to be more conversation around what that actually means and why that's so important, rather than listening to somebody that potentially has no experience and no qualifications, which is scary.
What does it take to win in this space, to actually be able to succeed in this space? I'm assuming that people on social media, on Instagram, don't want to hear about ISAs and pensions and index funds and passive active debate. And you have to put a lot of yourself out there, share the photos of your dog and your children, if you have one, and talk about your boyfriend or wife or husband. You know, a lot of financial advisors, no financial advisors. Very rarely would you find financial advisors who want to do this stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely something you have to accept and be willing to do before you do it. And I've had weird stuff happen. Like I've had my account like fake accounts created pretending to be me, and like take photos of my boyfriend and my dog, and my boyfriend's like, how dare they take a photo of me? And it's really weird. But I do just think it's important to be there for the people that are online, and because that is where the next generation, or whatever you want to call them, that is where they are looking. They are searching TikTok for where they should put their money, and they're looking on Instagram. Like then that's where they are now. So if you want to connect and speak to those individuals, it's not the only place, but it is a massive part of it.
The other thing is about this image of a financial advisor as, forgive me, old, stuffy, rather than young, vibrant female, approach. Again, how do we go about changing that impression, or is it even important to change? Should we just keep to the current perception of serious, older, probably male in their 50s, because that comes with wisdom and respectability, so to speak.
Yeah, I think for me, it always comes back to relatability. And I think you look at the average age of a client for a financial advice firm, and typically it's always 45 upwards, if not a very large percentage in 60 upwards. And I've seen that. I've worked in a lot of financial advice firms, and I've seen that through hundreds of clients. And they're not getting any younger clients, and they're trying to speak to the kids, but the kids aren't interested, and that's a problem for their succession plan and their business. And it seems to really, like, they don't understand why, and it all comes back to relatability. Like, they want to sit in front of somebody who's similar to their own age, and they want to be able to relate to the company, whether that's their employees or their brand or what they're doing as a company, whether it's the way they speak. It's that's what I feel like is missing, is the relatability. And that really is important. And I totally agree about the kind of like older age wisdom thing. Like, there's definitely been situations where I've gone into a meeting, and actually I've done it with my dad, because at the end of the day, they trust him more. Potentially they're an older client, and they relate more to my dad. Like, that's absolutely fine. But at the same time, I've had younger clients that are similar to my age that have said to me, I would never sit in front of your dad. Like, I'd feel awkward. I wouldn't know what to say. I feel like I could say the wrong thing. But in front of me, because they can relate to me, we just have a cup of tea and a really relaxed conversation. And because the majority of financial advisors are older males, like they are, there are statistics to show that does limit who then comes forward as clients. Because I have numerous conversations where individuals say, I don't feel like I'm worthy of financial advice. I don't feel like I can approach a financial advisor. I don't feel like it's for me. I feel like it's for the old, for the rich. And that is because of what companies are putting out. Like, there is a reason why they feel that, and that is because what they're putting out into the world. There isn't a lot of companies that are exciting and relatable and fresh and all of those things. Like, and I think it needs to happen. And also, it doesn't mean that the companies like my dad's, there's not a place for them. Like, my dad's business does brilliantly. He has amazing, lovely clients. Like, my dad still needs to be there. But I'm not saying sack off my dad and all those other advisors. Like, I'm just saying there needs to be more diversity in the world of financial advice. Like, it's just not there at the moment.
Yeah, there's this lovely picture of you and your dad in Citywire, and it just strikes me. So you're standing in front of a boat, I think, and he's
Yeah.
obviously suited, booted, of course, older, and you're wearing
Yeah.
this gorgeous, beautiful dress. You got your hair down, younger, vibrant, and that combination of, age and wisdom, but young, and vibrant, of vibrance. I don't know what the grammar is incredible. Do you think that's why your dad brought you back, or kind of brought you into the business? Is that part of the reason? Is succession part of it?
I think it's the moaning from me for him to hire me, to be fair. It took me about 7 years to wear him down to actually hire me. But yeah, I think he, being around me now, he totally sees how needed it is. Like, when the kids maybe do want to have a conversation, they don't want to sit in front of him. Like, they do want to sit in front of someone their own age. And clients, whatever company it is, want to know there is a succession plan. Like, companies, like, clients are asking companies that. I've heard it a lot recently, where new clients are coming on board and they're saying, because the advisor, like, my dad has got grey hair, and like a lot of advisors, you can see they are older and probably near on retirement themselves. People are saying, okay, well, what's going to happen when you're not working anymore? Which is a totally reasonable question to ask, because they've probably got another 20 years of planning to go. So if that advisor goes off and retires, they want to know what's going to happen next. So I always, when I started my career, every company I worked for, they were like, we're not making you an advisor, like, you're too young, like, no one's going to take you seriously. And in hindsight, I wish I kind of had what I've seen now in the, okay, well, what about the kids of the biggest family you've got in the business? Like, how are you engaging with them? Like, it needs to be looked at differently, not just you're too young, no one's going to take you seriously. Actually, how can we use the younger advisors to make a plan for the business and grow the business in different ways? I think there's so much potential there, but not everyone sees it.
Yeah, that interesting combo. I don't want to say Batman, Robin, like older, uh, wiser, and younger and vibrant, financial planner could be a great win. So let's talk about. I think this dovetails into some of the work that you guys are doing. You and Helena, we interviewed, and Elena on the podcast. Talk a little bit about what you're doing with Money Means, which is essentially a startup to bring financial advisor to the younger audience. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it all, for me, on my behalf, it all came from being on social media, attracting the clients I was attracting. They were younger than the typical financial planning client, and I was bringing them into my dad's business, and I was like, there's just like a part that doesn't fit. It doesn't quite fit. So they would see me on Instagram being excited and vibrant and relatable and fresh and bright and all of these things, and they would be attracted by that, and we'd have the first conversation, and then they'd pass through to my dad's business, which is just a very typical classic financial planning business, but it is quite old school. And then they'd be like, that would really confuse them, and they would carry on because I'd luckily built that relationship already. But they were like, this doesn't really seem to fit with you, Chanelle, like the conversations we've had. So there was that part of it. And then there was also the fact that a lot of individuals I was speaking to didn't have the classic big pension transfer or big cash ISA they wanted to transfer, or all of like, they didn't have a pot of money really. They'd either like they're saving for a house or they've just bought a house, but they had some disposable income and they didn't know what to do with it. And actually financial planning earlier on could make a massive difference to their life. But because they don't have that pot of money, many companies won't see them because it's not worth their while. And at the end of the day, if you do percentage fees, it won't cover your costs, and it's so expensive to run a business. And I was kind of thinking about this in my head, and I was thinking, okay, well, we just need to think of a different way to charge them, because people are prepared to pay. Like, there's many things people pay for now: gyms and coaching and life coaching, career coaching, and Pilates classes and all these things, and they're not cheap. Like, people want to pay for something that will make a difference to their lives. So in my head I was like, well, why wouldn't we do that for financial planning? Like, it just makes sense to me. So I basically started to run with this idea of how we could just charge them differently. It'd be a different business model. You wouldn't look at it and compare it at all to a typical financial planning business, because it wouldn't be anything like it, from the branding to the way we speak to the people that are employed. They would just be so different. And I got super excited about this idea, and I said to my dad that it just doesn't fit with how the business works. It needs to be a separate entity and all this kind of stuff. And I then also started really researching what the next generation want. And when I say the next generation, I literally mean like sort of like under 45, like just not the typical financial planning client, and getting a lot of interesting data and research. And I went and did a talk at a conference on this very topic of what they want from financial planning, and it was so interesting, some of the results. And I did this talk, and Helena was in the audience, and she also put me forward for the talk. And she pulled me aside afterwards, and we sat down, and she told me all about Money Means. And it was like we were thinking about the same thing in two different parts of the country. It was so crazy, because I'm sure you all know that most of the time when I had this conversation with financial planners, they were like, that's crazy, that's never going to work, like, or it's like not worth it, or like they just completely sort of dismissed it. Whereas we just basically had the same idea in different places, and we were like, oh my god, this is amazing. Like, why shouldn't financial planning be accessible? Like, there has to be a way to do this. And Helena had done so much research and so much amazing stuff to show that this could work, and everything I'd thought about and what she had thought about could work. We could make financial planning accessible. It could be a subscription basis. It could be relatable and exciting and fun and all these things. And we both also knew how life-changing financial planning could be. We'd both seen it. I'd sat with my dad's clients and seen it, and Helena had seen it with so many of her clients. And just imagine we could do this with people earlier in their life and save that conversation of, I wish I did this earlier. Like, so many people say it because they don't know where to go for financial advice. They don't know who to speak to and they don't think it's accessible. So if we can start so much earlier on, like, the difference, like, just blows my mind thinking about it. Like, the difference you can make to people's lives is just crazy. So that's kind of all where it came from. So after that conversation, we came together and we've been building it ever since, really, which is or Helena had already done an absolute ton in the background before, but together we've been building from about 6 months ago, and we're due to launch end of the year, later, like early part of next year. And we're just so excited for people to be able to use it, for people to see it and just make a real difference, because financial planning can be so life-changing. Money, knowing about money and what to do with it, everyone should know how to do that. It shouldn't just be for certain people, it should be for absolutely everybody. So that's what we're going to try and do.
It's incredible stuff. So the way, again, I'm inferring from, what you've just said, the conversation I've previously had with Elena. The way I'm thinking about this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you guys are sitting in the middle, in between. There are lots and lots of apps out there, budgeting apps, money tracking apps and things like that, on the one hand. And on the other, you have investing apps where, it's all about, invest your money, all that stuff. But you guys are sitting somewhere in the middle where there is, it's a membership, subscription based, educational content, I'm assuming a lot of educational content, a lot of classes, is it? And then at some point, a personal interaction with a financial coach or financial planner, whatever you might call it. And then does that lead somehow to transaction? So they have money, they want to invest the money. You've gone through all the sort of initial phase of budgeting, planning. How are you thinking about this? Or what I want to tease out a little bit of what you guys I know it's not out there yet, but I'm curious.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, exactly as you said, and definitely with the human part of a financial planner. And that was so important to us, because I would have conversations with people when I was thinking about the idea, and they were like, well, the younger generation, they just want robots. I'm like, no, they don't. Like, they don't want robots. Like, when it comes to stuff that is emotional or stressful, or sometimes all you need is that small conversation with a real life person to say, it's going to be okay, you're going to be all right, this is going to be okay, I'm telling you this, you can trust me. And that counts for so much. So to start with, the most important thing for us is getting full holistic financial planning about your life, where you're at now, where you want to get to, how we can help you get there, and implementing stuff, because we know that's important, and transactional stuff is definitely something we have in the pipeline for the future. But as we start, it's going to be real holistic financial planning and looking at where they're at now and where they need to get to and how we can help them. And transactional stuff will come at a later date. We will make sure they know where to go if they do need anything, because we know it's a really important part. We don't want to sit down with them and say this, that and the other, and then okay, you're off on your own. Like, there needs to be help all the way through the journey, because that's how people go through with things and actually put things in place. But yeah, it's just like we're starting to look at what's being built now, and like we're getting there, and I'm sure you've probably had the same experience, like looking at it coming to life, like out of your brain onto like a computer and a phone. And it's just so exciting, and seeing how the value we thought we could bring to individuals is actually coming to life, and we can see how they would use it. It's just so exciting.
It's incredible. I look forward to seeing more of it in the world. Let's talk a little bit about your podcasts. So talk a little bit about the podcast. Why? What is he trying to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called Her Future Bright, and it basically all stemmed from when I first joined the industry. I'd go to events with my dad, and it would be sort of like 250 men over 60, me, maybe a couple of other women, but also not generally normally sort of like 50 plus. And I just felt so out of place. Like, I literally had somebody come up to me once and ask if I was in the wrong place. And I thought, really? Like, I was like, how is this happening? And if it wasn't for my dad, I would have absolutely spun on my heel and been out of there so quick, because it just makes you feel uncomfortable. Like, I would have never have said anything because I felt like I shouldn't have been there. And it was just a bit of a rubbish experience. And all I really wanted was a, I don't know, a mentor, somebody to look up to speak to, who maybe already was a financial planner who I could relate to. And back sort of like 7-8 years ago when I started in financial services, LinkedIn wasn't as much of a thing, and I didn't really use it, so I didn't look on there, and I was just like, I don't know who to speak to. And a lot of the companies I joined, all the advisors were male and often wouldn't really give me the time of the day to talk about it anyway. So I then what happened is I started to have, a few years later, I started having conversations with amazing women in finance, and I kind of thought to myself, like, why am I only getting this information? Why, it would be so much better if more people could listen to this and I could share what I'm learning with everybody else who wants to learn it. So it started as a LinkedIn live video on a Friday, which was the scariest thing in the world because it was live and I had numerous technical issues. It just always seemed to happen when we went live. But what it did make me realise was people were listening and finding the content of the conversation we were having useful, inspiring, motivating, all these things. And I did it on LinkedIn for a while, and I was like, okay, I really enjoy this. Like, there genuinely is like real value coming out of this. The people I were interviewing, women in finance basically, were amazing and giving so much inspirational content. It was blowing my mind. And I thought, okay, I really want to run with this. So I thought, okay, the next best thing would be a podcast. I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? I have absolutely no idea. And also everyone kept saying to me, like, there's so many podcasts out there. Are you sure you want to do a podcast? And I was like, well, yeah, because like this is different. Like there isn't a podcast like this at the moment. And actually, I really love it. And I think when you can listen to real, genuine excitement and enthusiasm in the host and in the conversation, that really helps. So I was like, right, okay, I'm going to do this. So the best bit was, I was like, okay, I really want like an amazing first guest, like somebody that people are going to be like, wow, how does she do that? And Ruth from Octopus, the CEO, I messaged Octopus and I thought, okay, I was like, look, I don't have a name yet. I don't actually have a podcast yet. I don't really have anything, but I have an idea and I'd really love Ruth to come on. Like, I would really appreciate it, thinking they would never reply. And they did. And when they replied, like, I can't even tell you how happy I was. And Ruth said yes, and she came on as the first guest. And ever since then, I've just loved it so much. It's been such a passion project. And this series just gone, I had JP Morgan Asset Management as the sponsors, and it seemed to all suddenly get a bit real, and people were actually listening, and like people come up to me and be like, I listened to your podcast. I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, that tends to be what people do now, but like, it's weird when someone says it. But yeah, I just love doing it so much, and I get messages and comments about what people have taken from it. And yeah, it's just an absolute passion project. So I'm gonna keep doing it, and my idea will be to have an episode every week. So I'm working towards that, but I'm sure, as you know, it's a big commitment. But hopefully we'll get there eventually. But yeah, I absolutely love it. It's a huge passion project for me.
So the idea is essentially showcasing women in financial services and talking about their experience, because you're right. If you look at maybe traditional industry, anything conference, you know, sometimes, well, not sometimes, a lot of times, the female, you stand and you think, well, are there women in this industry? Because of just the way the industry is structured. This is something that I had questioned a long time. You speak to a lot of women. There are a lot of leading women in the profession and things like that, and yet they say that there are obstacles to women generally in this profession, and I don't understand it because I'm not a woman. Talk a little about what obstacles women face um, in the profession when it comes to progressing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I experienced personally, like when I was in other companies apart from my dad's, like there was numerous conversations where I said I wanted to be a financial planner, and often my age would get brought up, but often also they would say, well, like they would literally say like, well, you're a woman. And I'm like, what? Like, what does that even mean? Like, what difference does that make? And like I said, there was companies where no other planners would be women. So they had this weird mindset where it was like, well, and that means none could be. And they would be sort of like, well, you have to stay as a power planner role, or you have to stay an admin. And it just felt a lot harder to move. And there would be situations where a young male advisor would come in and he would just come in as a planner or an advisor. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And I used to get so frustrated because often I'd then hand in my notice and then they'd offer it to me. And I'm like, why does it take me handing in my notice for you? I'm like, absolutely not, mate. I was like, you can keep your job and I am off. But it would be so frustrated that you'd have sort of young male planners and advisors come in, they'd go straight into the role with no experience. And whereas I'd asked to move from one job into planning and they'd be like, well, no, you're a young female, like no one's going to take you seriously. And I kind of like, when I actually started having clients, I had this like aha moment of like, people take me seriously, like, because people tell you for so long they're not going to, that when people do, you're like, oh, this is good, isn't it? Like they actually do, because everyone said they wouldn't. So yeah, it did always just prove harder. And in the conversations I have in the podcast, some of the questions I always ask every guest, and one of them is sort of what's been the greatest thing you've achieved in your career so far, and the other one is what has been most difficult. And like you see a similarity in the answers. Like often it will be, I didn't myself, like I didn't feel confident enough to go for that role, and I didn't feel like my team pushed me hard enough to be like, you can do this. Or whereas sometimes the men, and this is own personal like thoughts and feelings, but the men would step into the role and be like, yeah, I could do that. And like there's loads of statistics that say that men have that higher confidence of going into that job and applying for a job they've got absolutely no qualifications in and ask for a really high salary, but sometimes we just don't do it. So it's really interesting in what they say. And there was a guest the other week who talked about I believe she was working on like a trading floor, and they basically said she didn't get the job because she was female. But and I do think we've come a long way since then, and I can see a change in the last like 8 years. 100% I've seen a change, but I do still think there is a way to go, and there's still some changes that need to be made.
Yeah, someone listening to this will say, but that would be illegal, right? Illegal. It's literally legal for you not to not offer someone a job because of their sex or their age, primarily because of that. But the reality is it's never so you know brutally obvious that that's the reason, or they do it in a way that it's very hard, if not impossible, to prosecute.
Yeah, 100%. And also, like, at the time, like, I was quite young, and like, what was I going to do? Like, I would have been, I didn't want to go to HR and be like that person that was like moaning because maybe I hadn't had the job that long, or I hadn't really established myself in the business. And I also had times where I tried to speak to managers, stuff like that, and it goes over their head and they don't do anything. And then it's like, okay, well, what is the point in saying anything? So yeah, exactly as you said, it's not like they've sent an email and said, we're not giving you this job because you're a woman or you're female, whatever. Like that would be like, forward HR. But I say that, but would I don't know, because like you don't want to be that person that's like making a problem. So yeah, exactly as you said, it's not as obvious sometimes, and it is changing, but I'm pretty sure it still happens.
Yeah, and I wonder how you change this type of frankly, culture, toxic culture. There are other things relating to maternity and all those sort of things that they're like structural obstacles for
Hmm.
women, and I don't know how you change it. Of course, some of the work that you're doing, such as just being out there, right, for other people to see you. The podcast is one reason. Sorry, one way to give visibility and profile. Um, and of course, having women leaders, I've thought, actually should or could be one reason, which is, I don't talk about this, but in our company, I try very hard, certainly the senior level, to make sure that we have that balance. Um, One thing that I have always not been sure of is women only awards, right? So I want to get your perspective on. So I know that I think that what should be happening is pushing for greater recognition in the traditional industry awards rather
Hmm.
than creating, sort of special award for female. Because to me, what you're saying is if you say this is a best female financial planner, I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to be best female financial planner. I want to be the best financial planner. The same thing goes. People do this. I said to my team, I said, the day anyone in this industry comes to me and say, we're creating, award for, black ethnic minorities or whatever, and they say you're the best black CEO. I'm like, no, I don't want that. You don't want to be the best flipping CEO on the planet. So I don't know, right, is what I'm saying. But from your point of view, do you think this type of female only awards are helpful? Do they serve? Are they helpful to the cause? Is what I'm trying to ask.
I think I think at some point, because of the way the industry profession, whatever you want to call it, is, somebody felt it was needed to have those women only awards. And actually I think that's quite sad.
Mm,
That it was probably needed in the first place. And I
mm,
totally
mm.
agree with what you said. If I was, say, nominated for a Women's Only award and just a General Financial Services award, if I'm honest, the General Financial Services award would mean a hell of a lot more, because exactly as you said, like, I don't want to just be just best out the women, like, I want to best out everyone. But like, is it exactly as you said? So yeah, I've had this conversation a few times with colleagues and other people, and I do totally agree. I don't think they're bad. I think it's a shame we need them. I think people getting recognised in any way is a good thing. And whether, if that means it boosts their confidence or it's good for their business, I think that's all great, amazing things. But I think it's a shame we have to have it. And ideally, in the best case scenario, I think it would actually be better if we had, I don't know, more awards ceremonies or whatever to replace the ones that are women only, and like they shouldn't be needed. I do always think though, when I see the women, like the women in finance, stuff like that, the awards, the nomination list come out, I think, whoa, that list just get bigger and bigger. And it does kind of blow my mind how many women are in financial services when they release the nomination list. So stuff like that, I think that's nice. But I do totally agree. I think somebody at some point thought it was needed, which is a shame. But if someone gets recognised, I'm all here for that.
That's incredible. Let's look forward to the day that we don't need them anymore. I've enjoyed this conversation, Chanel. Thank you very much for your time, for your wisdom, for putting yourself out there. I think it's incredible. And yeah, good luck for what is yet to come.
Thank you. I've had the best time. I've really, really enjoyed it. I knew we'd have a good time. But no, it's been brilliant. Thank you.
I'll be remiss if I don't thank my incredible team who worked very hard to put this program together. Thank you very much, guys. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Timeline App, the retirement planning software, and Batefolio, the high-tech, low-cost flat fee model portfolio manager. And to you, our listeners, thank you for your time. I hope you've had as much fun listening to the program as we have. making it. You can find more about the show at retirementals.co.uk, and you can follow me on Twitter. My handle is Abraham on Money. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.